Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, a Bridge Too Far episode. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm the Food Professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Our guest on this episode is Jason McLinton, President, Fisheries Council of Canada. A 25-year veteran of such things, Jason is widely recognized for his innovative and personal approach to government relations and advocacy. I can personally testify to that. The Fisheries Council of Canada is a nonprofit trade association representing for over 100 years companies engaged in the harvesting, processing, importing, and marketing of wild capture fish and seafood. As I intone, Jason actually is a former colleague of mine from Retail Council of Canada. Great guy.
You've known him for a long time, huh?
Known him for a long time, worked alongside him, much respect. Because as you hear, Jason's been on both sides of the table. He's been both a regulator and a lobbyist and an advocate. And when we wanted to understand, or our members wanted to understand, what's the intent of the written legislation? Like, what were you trying to accomplish? So we're trying to do something, and we're trying to interpret it, and the lawyers would interpret it, black letter. This is what it says. And we would ask Jason, and then ask him to ask, civil servants, what did you actually intend? And it was just so helpful, and he's just so good at it. So it's a great conversation.
Yeah, he's bringing a lot of energy to the Fisheries Council, and frankly, he knows the game in Ottawa, and it shows. And I think the sector needs that. They need someone like Jason to be well connected and understanding how rules work. As you know, Ottawa is kind of a different place, There's a bit of an ecosystem, and you don't necessarily need to appreciate fisheries. Of course, I think over the last year or so, because he's been in this position for less than a year, he has learned a great deal about the sector, but he understands the actual lobbying game going on in Ottawa, and that's going to be helpful for the sector.
Well, and he sat in the chair on the other side of the table, which just adds, as I said, an incredibly helpful dimension.
Oh, absolutely.
On both sides, I think. So you've got your traveling headset on. Where are you today, and what do you do?
I'm actually in Saskatoon, so I actually flew in yesterday for a great panel. It was an event for Canadian Ag Day. It was actually on February 10th, and so there were some festivities here in Saskatoon. And frankly, I was actually invited to go to Ottawa for this week. There's lots going on in Ottawa for Ag Day, but honestly, I always find myself looking at an eco chamber. It's all ag folks. Because most Canadians don't know that it was Ag Day yesterday, really. I mean, so what I wanted to do for this year was to actually join a community event with students, community groups, and faculty, and talk about ag. And so last night, there was a panel on, and I was joined by a biologist and a First Nation chief to talk about agriculture in general, from different angles, of course. When I look at food, I look at food distribution and policy. Their focus was different. The chief is a farmer himself, and moderator Clinton was also a farmer. But in the room, it was just a lot of people that were curious, and they wanted to understand all sorts of things that's going on in the food economy. And to me, that's really the future. So there were a lot of people in the audience and online as well. So we got questions for about 2 hours. So it was pretty good. And then we actually went out for a nice dinner last night. And now this morning I'm off to Ottawa and then Montreal on Thursday, same day. So busy week for me for sure.
Well, you better hope the weather cooperates. But so far, it sounds things are moderating in temperature. You were telling me it's about 3 degrees or -3 in Saskatchewan or Saskatoon. So
it's pretty nice. It is the ag research capital of the province. Really, U of S is. I must say, U of S is. I've worked here before. It's a great institution. There's just some great, fantastic research going on here.
Well, speaking of great institutions, did you see the Bad Bunny show from
did
from the sleepy Super Bowl? The Super Bowl is the most boring event of the year, but every now and then.
Actually, I used to play football, and I was in defense. I was a halfback, and so I loved the game. Really?
Yeah, a very defensive game for sure.
But you didn't like it.
I find it very, very boring to watch.
But we were hosting the Super Bowl, and of course, everyone wanted to watch the halftime show, which I thought was great. Actually, it was overall it was really good, very entertaining, and we still don't know who got married, but that's okay.
Of course, the other side show for the Super Bowl is all the commercials. Now we in Canada, we're just smothered by the scourge of online gambling ads, so we don't get to see all the U.S. commercials. But
it's over the top, eh?
But I'm encouraged. They're all losing to the prediction markets. Are you following this poly market thing? Where you can go on and make bets on poly market. Yep. Well, I'm seeing the online gambling sites. We're a little off topic now. Are just losing market share tremendously to these poly markets, including. I don't know if you saw. That you didn't see it on television, that there was somebody who was running on the field, right? He got out and ran on the field, and they had to stop the show for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
It turns out he made a bet on himself on Polymarket that he could get on the field and run, and I think he made like $500,000 by doing that because he took the bet, right? It's just crazy what's going on. Anyway, I wanted to talk about the ad. So one of the biggest ads of the show was Pepsi. They had a 3-minute ad, which looked like, the ad they run about the farmers. The potato chips are made here, the potatoes are made here, and it was kind of like, I'm not crying, you are kind of thing with the father handing down the deed to the daughter about being a potato farmer, and the whole thing.
Well, people don't realize. I mean, PepsiCo has several plants in Canada, and they basically mostly buy Canadian commodities grown by farmers, and so it's people think, well, it's a multinational, it's junk, it's this and that. Actually, not really. I mean, you have to look at the supply chain to appreciate the immense contribution of companies like PepsiCo, McDonald's the same. I mean, there's lots of companies, vertically integrated companies that do a great job supporting our agriculture and farmers.
And Pepsi run by a native of Saskatchewan, right? Who's been on our podcast.
That's right. And frankly, it's really appropriate. I mean, she's gone. Kara Keating's we're talking about, and she's been to the United States. Now she's back in Canada, leading the whole thing.
All right. So speaking of bad bunnies, let's talk about Howard. Oh, I forgot I went to Epstein Island, and all I got was this lousy T-shirt, Lutnick. And the call he got from Ambassador Bridge owner Matthew Moran, who I searched actually in the Justice Department Epstein Files database. You can do that now because that's what Lutnick said. Everybody searches their names. Of course, he does. And I didn't find him though, to be fair.
Yeah.
Now he's crying about the Elbows Up Bridge, the Gordie Howe Bridge. He owns the other bridge, the Ambassador Bridge. He's been agitating. So one call to Lutnick, and then Mr. Frontal Lobe Dementia makes a call and does a tweet about, I'm going to block this bridge. Now, what does this bridge mean to agriculture? Because there's an existing bridge for those. This is
the Ambassador Bridge.
The Ambassador Bridge. It's kind of
they're about 2 kilometers apart.
Yeah, they've been. I've been watching it from an engineering perspective. It's spectacular, and of course, it's been a big fight.
It's a beautiful bridge. The Gordie Howe Bridge. The Ambassador Bridge is, It needs love.
It needs love. Well, and for background, Canada paid 100% of the cost of building that bridge. We hired trades from both sides of the border, and I think from Michigan, the great state of Michigan is our partner in it. It's co-owned with Michigan. Yep. Canada is going to get all the tolls to kind of pay back the cost of building it. Now, what's going on? What's it worth? How important is this? It's one of many other examples.
Well,
let's talk about it for a second.
From an agri-food trade perspective, I mean, it's 25% of all of our trades in Canada. I mean, that section, that bridge, and we're just talking about the Ambassador Bridge because the other one, the Gordie Howe Bridge, is not open yet. But it's 25%. It's $8 to $12 billion worth of food going back and forth to support between Michigan and Windsor and Ontario. So it's a really critical point. And trucking is a cheap way, very effective way to actually get food in and out of our country. And so the Gordie Howe bridge is designed to add capacity to that, so which will make that connection even more attractive. I think a lot of people think that once the Gordie Howe Bridge is built, they'll destroy the other one. Actually, no, the Ambassador will remain. And so we're talking about adding more capacity here, not just for cargo, but for cycling, for everything else. So, and of course, the bridge is going to be huge, and it is going to help trade for sure. And because when you go through the Ambassador Bridge, I don't know if you've been there. I've been there many times, and it slows down.
Well, it's built for the 60s, right? I mean, it's built for a prior time, even just from a design perspective, and it comes at an interesting time, right? Because you just wrote an op-ed, and I want to talk about you wrote an op-ed that basically acknowledges this is one of these things. This is one of these boycotts that's actually working a little bit, right? With the Canadians continue to shy away from American food. I think that is today. We'll see how long that lasts. But I think that bridge was built for expanding trade, not contracting trade. Yeah. But in the context,
and we were learning this morning that from Bloomberg that for the first time, Donald Trump, President Trump, actually has mentioned in private talks that he's considering leaving CUSMA altogether. And so we're starting to see, and I still believe that the United States will review and stay with CUSMA. I think it's more like the Gordie Howe Bridge. We paid for it and we got screwed by the Canadians. I mean, that's posturing, and that's his style. But I think it's going to get even more intensive in months to come, which will actually push more people to think about, boycotting American products at the grocery store.
Well, there's no question. I mean, if you look at how many people are traveling to the U.S., Canadians are traveling. I follow some of these guys in Las Vegas, and it's not just Canadians. There's a lot of people now betting online. They don't have to go to. If you wanted to bet, you used to have to go to Vegas. So now you can bet online, and the prices got out of control. And they always say, and there's way less Canadians. And I can tell you, I have to go there in a month or so, and there's not a lot of flights, there's just not a lot of Canadians going to Vegas. So this is real. We'll see how long lasting, whether it gets better or worse. Now, you continue to say that this is our time. This is the moment to generate lasting economic benefits by investment in the sector. So talk about that and talk about this. There's two investment things here going on that we want to talk about. Most importantly, this $5 billion through Farm Credit Canada and private investors.
Pledges, no checks, but pledges, but still.
They're not pledges from governments. They're pledges, private sector, once they pledge, pretty
20
much.
different groups. So it was announced during Ag Day yesterday that FCC is coordinating a group of 20 investment funds to support agriculture and agri-food over the next 4 years. So until 2030, we're looking at an investment of $5 billion. It's not a whole lot, but it's enough to make a difference, I think. So and with our work with MNP, what we're realizing with Canada is that governments tend to do most of the heavy lifting when it comes to agriculture and food, and that needs to end. We need to see the private sector pick up the pace, and that's exactly what we're getting with this new coalition of 20 investment funds, which I think is good news, to be honest. I think we need more of these things, and we were talking about it yesterday, in fact, with the panel at the U of S, and frankly, we need more of these things. So hopefully it will create some momentum, and of course, the other issue is scalability. I mean, we do not have companies that can scale up due to these interprovincial trade barriers. Our fiscal regime is quite heavy, and that's something that the government can do to help. Now, Ottawa has done some of the work that is needed to eliminate barriers, but it's really up to provinces to move forward and eliminate all barriers to allow many companies to sell outside their own province and export as well eventually.
Now, one of my key takeaways from this article was that there's new leadership at Farm Credit Canada, which, for those who don't know, is a Crown corporation. And many of the response to the private investors were like, we didn't even know you existed. So this could be an important role for FCC, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I mean, I would say I would take that comment with a grain of salt, to be honest, because Farm Credit Canada is certainly known. Maybe not on Bay Street. I think that was
Mm,
the point that
that
is
was the
being made.
point. Yeah, yeah, that
Yeah,
was. Yeah,
and but I would say because in farming, I mean, I
sure.
actually met quite a few farmers last night that they told me without FCC they wouldn't have a farm. I mean, that they wouldn't have a business, and so FCC. The tricky part for FCC is that it can't really invest unless you have partners like what was announced yesterday. I mean, it is government money. I mean,
Hmm.
and FCC cannot take on too much risk. It provides a dividend to the government. That's the role of FCC. So I think overall, I think there's something to celebrate, but there's a lot of more work to be done.
Well, we don't talk about big investments like that. I consider $5 billion pretty big. I know on the scale of the ag sector, it's relatively small, but we don't talk about that much on this show. So I'm glad to talk about it.
Yep.
Now, there is also a $75 million investment in the programs in the next 5 years from Canadian agriculture, from the government, including fish and seafood. That seems quite de minimis at 75 in 5 years. What do you know about that program?
I mean, I think that it's more about value add, and of course it's significant. But I was a little disappointed. I mean, 75 million is not a whole lot. I know that Kate Kelmore in the Globe actually covered the story, but it wasn't really covered all that much. I just think it's some money, but I'm not sure if it's going to make much of a difference. But who knows? We'll see. It is actual money, unlike the 5 billion. The 5 billion is still just
Commitment,
a pledge.
yeah. That's true. That's fair.
Yeah. So 75 million is actually real, actual money. So listen, we're not going to say no to $75 million. So we're not going to say no to $10,000. I mean, every bit helps, really.
Well, speaking of every bit helps, just to wrap this up, there's an article in the Globe and Mail on the founders, Speck Brothers, the founders of a winery in Ontario here, Henry of Pelham, one of my favorite wineries. And It's interesting because they talk about the benefits of expansion and the benefits of the removal of the U.S. wines from the shelves and the benefits of getting into Costco. And, if you've shopped wine at Costco, it's not endless shelves of wine. They pick very specific, like Costco tends to do, right? And they said
they have a limited number of SKUs, yeah.
And what their observation, I thought it was interesting. They said, well, listen, when Costco makes a choice, their customers trust their choice, and they've gone from like 800 to 8,000 points of distribution, and the price of the wine that's selling is clearly 15 to 25. So you've got a good value and probably hopefully a good margin for them. Anyway, so good expansion. We talked about this many times in the context of wine and other products, that you got to take advantage of this opportunity as a manufacturer or winemaker, not just sit back and enjoy the fact that competition has disappeared. And it seems that, it seems to me that the Henry of Pelham Speck Brothers are doing just that.
Yep.
Yeah, let's stick with the government for a little bit. And on the other side, the end of destination inspection services, DIS. So I guess this is part of the overall cuts to the government to talk about what they were doing. This seems to be like they were stepping in and moderating when there was disputes between when fresh fruit arrived on the dock and it was deemed good, bad, or indifferent. And it was a service that's been around, but they're getting rid of this service and leaving it to the private sector. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, I must say it's a very small cut. I mean, that program is aligned with the U.S. and Mexico, and it doesn't cost a whole lot of money, but the elimination of the program is significant for the produce industry. So when you import, I'm sure you appreciate that produce is a fragile cargo. It can be damaged, can get damaged very easily.
Sure.
And so all countries in North America have agreed to set up a program that would allow inspectors to look at lots and provide guarantees to exporters or importers. So if there are any damages, at least there's some surveillance in assessing the impact of cargo and transportation, essentially, and not saying. So let's say, for example, Loblaw buys tomatoes from the U.S. and Loblaw would outright reject all of the tomatoes. Well, with that inspection will actually protect the exporter coming from the U.S., which actually makes Canada a much more attractive market because you have safeguards as an exporter. I don't know if you understand what I mean, but this program really reassures transactions or people involved in transactions one way or another. Either you're buying or selling, because it clarifies rules, and there's little room for posturing, if you will. I mean, when it comes to trades, I'm sure you appreciate that sometimes things can go like really haywire, and so that program was really important for all parties. And for unilaterally, for some reason, the CFIA has decided to cut that program, and it's a service you actually pay as an industry. Some of it is covered by the government, but the industry also covers some of the costs. So again, costs from our perspective are really not that significant. I think it's less than $2 million, Michael. It's nothing, okay? And but what may happen because of the end of the program is that we may actually see fewer exporters looking at Canada as a good place to sell products, which could actually decrease competition and push prices higher over time.
Or does this become a code of conduct issue when does it wrap into that where a shipment?
Well, the code of conduct is very domestically focused. This is about trades.
Wow.
This is about trades.
But if a grocer orders up a truckload of tomatoes, it arrives and they think it's less quality than they paid for, I guess, does that then result in a code of conduct thing?
Not necessarily, because it's not a contractual issue. It's more a quality control issue than anything else. The quality of the product going through the border. This is really a border issue. Okay, the code of conduct is more about. How's this
going to work now, though, without the DIS? How's it going to work?
That's right now. I would say I did speak to the Canadian Produce Marketing Association a couple of weeks ago, and they have no idea what to do now.
Well, I guess it sounds like you and I should start a new destination inspection service. By the sounds of it, there you go.
Half price, absolutely. We'll cover everything, no problem. Tomatoes, hey,
whatever, man.
But this is a really serious issue for Canadians, because it will likely impact the number of sellers wanting to sell to Canada because of that lack of guarantee at the border. You're throwing a bit of a Hail Mary to Canada, hoping that grocers will accept the stuff, and if they don't, then you're out of luck. You don't have anybody inspecting your lot at the border. So that's really the big problem right now.
All right, well, let's move on from that. Let's talk about, just before we get to our interview with Jason, let's talk about milk dumping. So you got new figures. You posted an op-ed. You saw some new figures. What's going on?
Yeah, actually, last night I was dairy farmers came to our panel last night, and we had dinner together.
What?
Yes, absolutely.
Did you have somebody taste your food, or how did that go?
But I've always told you there are two dairy sectors in Canada: one east of Toronto and one west of Toronto. People out west of Toronto. So Western Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC, they're all seeing what I'm seeing. I mean, we need to change things. And the executive director of Sask Milk actually got up and said, Sylvain's right. We need to change the system. But east of Toronto, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to hear about it. And of course, when it comes to transparency, there's none. But unless you know how to read reports, which I can. And so there's milk, the Milk Production Magazine that is issued by the DFO, the Dairy Farmers of Ontario. And over the years, it's really funny, Michael, because they know that milk dumping is not popular. They hate it, okay? And they've changed the word, and now they're using the word skimming. Skimming because
it's skimming. You just take this off the top. It's nothing, right?
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of milk being picked up. We're not talking about the milk dumping on the farm. Okay, it's milk being picked up, but once it comes to the plant, they reject it for a variety of different reasons. But often it's just there's too much. And so in the January magazine, in the January edition, the DFO did declare that 4.9% of the milk collected on the farm, and that's excluding the milk dumping ordered by the board, by the way. That's our study with McGill. We did that. We actually associated that. We actually measured that. So this is on top of what goes on the farm. And 4.9%, essentially, I know the butterfat demand is there, but what do you do with the skim milk? If there's no demand, well, it's thrown away. And so I came out with a number, and we basically just made it public through social media, and it went. People went berserk. Yeah, it's everywhere. It's great.
All right,
but I just wish that every board in Canada would be very transparent. And last night, the Dairy Farmers of Saskatchewan absolutely agrees. I mean, we need to be more transparent about, because at the end of the day, and this is really the most important part here, when milk is dumped in Canada, we pay for it. We pay for it. Indirectly, we pay for it. In the United States, farmers pay because it's a free market. That's the difference between Canada and the U.S. And that's why I think the dairy farmers need to be made more responsible.
Well, all right. Well, let's leave that one there. And if people want to understand this issue, there's about 10 episodes we've talked about this from all kinds of different angles.
Oh, yeah, I know, exactly. But it's not going away, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, including solutions about powderizing and doing other things with that.
Yeah, lots of solutions. Right? Lots of solutions. Raw milk. Yes, should I dare say.
And you dared. All right. Let's get to our interview with Jason McLinton, President, Fisheries Council of Canada. Jason, welcome to the Food Professor podcast this morning. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us. You and I have known each other many, many years. We were colleagues at the Retail Council of Canada, and I've followed your progression ever since. It's wonderful to get you on the microphone.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Michael, and then great to connect with you again. And Sylvain, great to connect with you again as well.
Yeah, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us on the Food Professor podcast.
Yeah, where are we finding you today? You in Ottawa, Jason?
I'm in sunny and cold Ottawa on this lovely February morning.
Nice. Nothing like Ottawa in February. As you know, I grew up there, so as I often say, it's a great place to come from. That's from my
exactly.
Here you go.
That's right.
Hey, listen, so obviously we know each other, Jason, but let's not assume everybody does. So tell us a little bit about your background and what you do for a living.
Yeah, well, I've got over 25 years of experience, if you can't tell already, gentlemen, by the gray in my beard, though you don't see me right now. But I've got over 25 years.
You sound young. See, you need to older people.
That's all that matters.
It's the enthusiasm. 25 years of experience, either in government or in government relations, almost entirely in the food and agri-food space. So I spent years working for Health Canada and Michael and Sylvain, where I met you both, at the Retail Council of Canada, where I headed up their grocery division, and now with the Fisheries Council of Canada. But I've also done some work in the environmental space, working for what was called at the time Environment Canada, now Environment and Climate Change Canada, and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. And so now, working with the Fisheries Council of Canada, I am proudly the voice of the wild capture seafood industry in this country.
Well, before I want to learn more about the council, but what's it like to be on both sides of that table? Would you recommend that to every advocate and associate, that they get to see, walk more than a few miles, but actually spend a couple of years in the chairs of the civil servants and the folks who are making policy and making decisions about policy implementation?
Absolutely. I find that industry needs a little bit of a hand learning how to speak to government, and government needs a little bit of a hand learning to speak to industry. And I think this business is like any other business, right? I often say it comes down to personal relationships and understanding how the other side works. Arguably, that's true in any line of business, but I think it's particularly true in ours. It's about trusted relationships and knowing how the other side works. You never really know, for example, how decisions are made in government unless you've been in there doing it yourself. And then you know what points of the process are flexible, which ones aren't, and when you're being handed a line and when you're not. So you wouldn't really know that unless you were the one handing the lines yourself in the past.
Now, you and I used to talk about the role of an advocate sometimes being the person who explains unintended consequences. Do you find that, or do you describe yourself in that way at cocktail parties and when you meet new people?
Well, I wouldn't limit it to that. I think that's certainly part of it, right? So a lot of times you'll have governments wanting to make movement in a certain area, oftentimes, if not almost always, well-intentioned, but then, maybe not fully understand the consequences, unintended and avoidable consequences of those decisions. There's ways to accomplish what you want almost all of the time without unnecessarily putting people out of business, for example. Right. But also, it's more proactive than that, right? It's to be effective in this space for industry and ultimately for Canadians. You don't just wait around for government to think about doing something. You go proactively and you say, hey, here's an opportunity where Canada could really position itself as a leader in this space. Or here's an irritant that you might not be aware of. So it's a bit of both. It's reacting to what they're thinking, but it's being proactive as well.
All right. Now tell us all about Fisheries Council of Canada. Who do you represent and why the seafood, I guess it's kind of itself a very obvious question, why the seafood sector matters so much to Canadians' food system. But tell us about the organization.
Yeah, so we represent the wild capture fisheries operating on all three coasts in Canada. And a lot of people, when they hear that, they think of fish and seafood harvesters, and our members are absolutely that. But I believe that almost every single one of them, if not all of them, are also processors. So they harvest and process seafood, which makes us different, I think, from other food sectors. Huge contributors to the Canadian economy. We represent over $9 billion in economic activity. And that's particularly true for Canada's coastal communities, right? Mm-hmm. Very, very active in the marine conservation and sustainability space. And what we refer to, when you put those two things together, Michael, we call that the blue economy. And so it matters, I think, for a lot of the reasons that seem self-evident, right? Like it's economic activity, it's a healthy protein, contributing to Canada's sustainability goals. But for me personally, seafood harvesting and processing is at the very fabric of what it means to be Canadian. It's one of the oldest industries in this country, predating the Europeans. And even before the Europeans started living here, there was fish harvesting and processing occurring in this country. So for me, it's part of the very fabric of who we are as Canadians.
Mm. Now, I mean, seafood is a really important economic sector in Canada. Actually, it does provide Canada with lots of jobs, lots of opportunities. But I just want to get your thoughts on this issue, Jason. Why do you think seafood is still treated as a regional or export issue rather than a core food security issue in Canada?
I think that that's changing, first of all. I think that
you think so, yeah?
I think so. I think that may have been the case in the past, but that is changing. And I think that's been evidenced. I'll give you one prominent and recent example is the agreement in principle between Prime Minister Carney and President Xi of China, where lobster and crab were specifically named as part of that agreement. I'm with you. I don't know that would have happened a few years ago. I don't know that we were on the radar the way that we are now. So I think that's changing. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more that we can do in that space to put our issues more at the front and center. But I think that historically that's been an issue. And my guess is that we haven't been as vocal as we are being now. And I think also that we are very much an export business, right? Because of, 9 billion in economic activity that I mentioned, well over 8 billion of that is exported. And why is that? Canada's a small country, yes, and the market's smaller, but also the kinds of seafood that we harvest here are not as popular here as they are in other parts of the world, such as Asia.
It's always been an odd thing, because we do export most of our products, and what we consume in Canada is most of it is actually imported, which is always. It's a little odd. It's an odd situation if you look at it from a domestic food security issue, for sure.
Well, what I know about, and I've been a gentleman 10 months on the job, and I'm learning. One of the things I find the most challenging and the most rewarding is that I'm learning about this business every single day. And one of the things that I've learned is that it is far more complex than people give it credit for, and more complex than I even knew. The amount of cross-border activity that occurs in this industry before a product makes it to the consumer's table, I had no idea. There's a lot of stuff that's harvested in Alaska and then processed and packaged in British Columbia and then sold in Washington State in the United States, and the reverse as well, right? So a lot of this stuff is much more integrated than I think people realize.
Geopolitically, I mean, you just mentioned China, and I'm sure you were pleased with the announcement a few weeks ago. Do you still feel the sector to be incredibly vulnerable from a geopolitical perspective? Is that something that's changing, or do you still see that on your dashboard?
Our members are adept at developing new markets. They have been for quite some time. For example, when trade with the Soviet Union came to an abrupt halt, over a decade ago, they pivoted, right? And they went to China. That is our second largest export market after the United States, and had been pre-tariff, growing in leaps and bounds. It had basically doubled over the last 10 years. So market access is really, really important in an export business, as you can well imagine. So we keep an eye on what's happening geopolitically, but they are very, very adept. They're very active in the United Kingdom, very active in the EU, Japan, South Korea. Indo-Pacific is a growing market for sure. Sure. But markets like the United States and China, gentlemen, they do not grow on trees.
They're hard to replace. Now, I have a quick question for you. You mentioned that we export a lot of goods that there's not a lot of market for here in Canada. What are we talking about, like sea cucumbers? Or give the listeners a sense of the things that we and your members harvest that Canadians are less fond of.
Well, it's. I think a lot of these are growing in North America as well. But what I can say is things like sea cucumber, gooey duck.
That's a weird looking thing. Gooey duck, man.
Delicacy.
Whoever came up with that name was pretty.
And it is fantastic. It is fantastic. I've been out on a gooey duck harvesting vessel, very hardworking members of the Fisheries Council out in Vancouver Island. That is delicious stuff, and it is an absolute delicacy in China. And even things like shrimp, for example. We eat shrimp, but turbot, halibut, other species like that. The species that I've just mentioned are 60, 70, 80, 90% dependent on the Chinese market. So sometimes it's a question of taste, but a lot of it is just volume. They love their seafood.
Interesting. Now, you mentioned that a lot of your members are also processors as well. So processing capacity in general feels like it's a major constraint in Canadian seafood. What are the barriers to competitiveness today? Sylvain talks about this on a broad scale in the food system, that we need to be better at encouraging more manufacturing and production here in Canada, more value adding. But what are the things that are on your members' mind? Labor shortages, energy costs, regulatory burden, something else? Like what's there when they come to you and they say these are the top 3 or 4 things that get in our way, or that conversely, if got better, we could be much, much more productive?
Well, processing is actually a strength in the seafood sector right, compared with other sectors. And I don't need to tell you, gentlemen, right, like we, the three of us were in this line of work during COVID, right? And we saw a lot of that concentration in some of the meat sector, for example. But what I'm seeing with our members is almost all of them, if not all of them, have their own processing capacity, unless it's shipped live, for example. And a lot of that stuff is even on vessel, like very sophisticated stuff where they'll do filleting and freezing and stuff like that on vessel, and then they have stuff on shore as well. They have facilities on shore. So for the seafood sector in Canada, I actually see our processing capacity and how much it's diversified to be a real strength. The barriers from my end from my perspective, are almost entirely man-made, right? So you have, for example, very well-intentioned environmental objectives and making numbers like 30 by 30, like that sounds great, right? To someone who doesn't know a lot about how marine conservation and the fishing industry works. Conserving 30% of the oceans, that sounds good, right? But the reality is that the most effective way to promote sustainable fishing and the environment writ large is through effective fisheries management, right? Using the right types of gear and the right amount of quota and catch seasons and things like that. So, that's a man-made barrier, I think, to our industry doing well. The other one, I think, is we are fisheries is a federally regulated area, right? More than I think any other industry that I can think of, right? A lot of other industries are regulated provincially or a mix of the two, and a lot of it is hands off. But this is very heavily regulated at the federal level. And while for most of the license holders and the quota holders, they've had to buy that stuff commercially, right? You will buy a license or buy quota at commercial value. Sometimes the government in the past has gone in and said, you know what, I think Peter should have more than Paul. And just ignoring, the fact that, Paul paid for that license and paid for that stuff.
Is that a regional economic development? But like the rationale behind, choosing winners and losers or making decisions?
I think there's been all kinds of reasons why one person or one group has gone in and tried to make a convincing argument in the past, inshore versus offshore, indigenous, non-indigenous, all that kind of stuff, right? So it's when government does things like that without consultation, without, compensation, that it can really, look, our business needs stability like anybody else's, right? And there's other stuff too, like making decisions based on, what's in the media today, instead of on science, things like that. So most of the barriers that we're seeing are man-made, and therefore the solutions that's the bad news. The good news is that the solutions
are unmade. They're easy to
right.
It can be unmade.
So things that sound pretty obvious to you and me, right? Base decisions on science. Right, rather than perceptions and misperceptions, right? Investing,
gut feel,
right, or reacting to whatever's in La Presse today or whatever. Investing in core fishery science, right, so that you know what's happening in the oceans and you can make educated fisheries management decisions based on that. So we're seeing positive signs of that. I think with this government, lots to do, but we're seeing positive signs.
Let me pick up on that because you've been in the gig 10 months, and so primarily you're seated within the Carney government, and let's turn our minds to climate change, climate action. There's been definite policy shifts from the Carney government along some lines, and of course, anything climate related will impact fishing stocks and harvesting patterns. What does that adaptation look like on the ground or on the water, so to speak, or on the boats for harvesters and processors? What is there any policies that are helping or holding them back from a climate change perspective?
Well, I'd start by saying that, the Canadian industry and the people that I work for, Michael, are absolute leaders in sustainability and in blue technology. One of the first things I did in this job was to go out and visit them in their operations, right? I went out onto a gooey duck harvesting vessel. I've been out to British Columbia, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia. And one of the things that really impressed me was how absolutely dedicated they are to sustainability and to marine conservation. Why is that? Because they're good people? Yes. But it's their livelihoods. It is not in their interest to be overfishing or, doing anything that erodes their livelihoods. So I can't comment.
We tend to forget that,
right? And I can't comment on what may or may not have happened in the 1950s and 60s, but our members are absolutely dedicated to this, investing in technology, the most modern and up to date practices and technology, right? So for me, in this space, I mentioned some of the, man-made barriers. Well, one of the big ones in this space is well-intentioned closures, right? Or marine protected areas, right? So for me, the way to achieve our shared objectives between industry and government and Canadians ultimately of a prosperous industry and sound marine conservation practices is for government and industry to work together on these things and focus more on good fisheries management rather than well-intentioned but misinformed closures.
To close things off, Jason, fisheries in Canada are regarded as one of the most sustainable in the world. Could you give us, for skeptics out there, could you give us a couple of metrics which would actually point to that argument, which in my view is very strong? I mean, you go around the world and yes, absolutely, Canada is seen as a sustainable source of fish and seafood. Are they metrics? Is there data out there really in reinforcing that message?
I would not be happy, Sylvain, if we didn't have a discussion about data in this podcast. Thank you.
It's the food professor. We need data. We need data.
Thank you for asking me that. Yes, and let me start by saying that you're absolutely right. Canadian wild capture seafood is considered a premium product globally. I was in China. I was fortunate enough to go to Shanghai for the China International Import Expo in November of last year. And one of the things that the buyers kept telling me is how much that Chinese consumers want Canadian seafood. It is considered a premium product.
I'm not surprised.
So for the metrics, I would go to MSC, or the Marine Stewardship Council. So they're a certification body, an independent third-party marine certification body that looks at sustainable harvesting practices. And we say Canada consistently ranks in the top 5 countries in the world. Now, top 5 in the entire world. That is very high. We say top 5 in order to play it safe. I can tell you that we are often in the top 3.
No, I'm not surprised at all. Absolutely not. No, because I've been to China and Canada is often seen as a very, very safe source for many different commodities, including fish and seafood. Absolutely.
And I think in the seafood space, we are seen as a safe source, but I think it's even more than that. If you want the good stuff, you buy Canadian.
Now, one of my concerns, as you probably know, Jason, is food affordability here at home. And we all know that a visit to the seafood and fish counter at the grocery store is not cheap. Is that something that concerns you as a group? And are they things that you're considering? Is there any effort there that you're considering for the future?
Well, as you just said, Sylvain, food affordability is a challenge writ large, right? It's been something I think been going on for years and years and years in this country and globally, and it's only been exacerbated, I think, by the pandemic. And really, a lot of this stuff was brought to light, I think, by the pandemic as well, right? It's a concern for sure. I think from our perspective, a lot of the challenges with pricing boil down to supply and demand, and therefore, on our end, I mentioned access, right? If we're unable to access the resource because of, well-intentioned but misinformed environmental objectives, or because government's coming in and saying, hey, Peter, I think you should have more than Paul, which creates uncertainty. If you can't go in there and get the fish, then what you have now by virtue of the supply, starts becoming more expensive, right? So access would be, I think, a big one. And then just, I think like most industries, we need a good, predictable, well-functioning regulatory environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Last question for you. We know that you're fairly new in your role, but you are a veteran in Ottawa, dealing with governments and dealing with industry. What are some of the things that is keeping you up at night, and what are some of the things that you're going to try to accomplish over the next 5 to 10 years for the industry?
Yeah, there are challenges for sure. If this stuff was easy, they wouldn't need us, but huge opportunities as well. So we're watching global market access closely, right? And we're very, very active in making sure that all Canadian seafood benefits from a tariff-free environment with China, but also with the United States, right? So we'll be continuing our discussions with officials here at home and in China and the United States around trade issues with our biggest trading partners, and then also involved in trade and free trade agreements with other parts of the world and growing markets such as the Indo-Pacific. So market access is a big one. Ensuring predictable and stable access to the resource is something that we're really focusing on. Working on sustainability. So some of the things that I mentioned, like effective sustainability through fisheries management and core fisheries science. And then, a really strong, predictable regulatory environment. So those are the challenges that we're facing. But within all of these, we see opportunities. And I am very fortunate to work for a very, very resilient sector that has proven time and time again over decades and centuries that they continue to deliver a sustainable and premium source of protein.
Jason McLinton, thank you so much for joining us on the Food Professor podcast. Now, I'll remind our listeners that you are the CEO of the Fisheries Council of Canada. Thank you very much, Jason.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure.
All right, we're back. Couple of last things I want to talk about. Did you see this Toronto fintech company being accused of stealing restaurant tips? I'd never heard of this company. But the Bank of Canada and the BC RCMP are investing. I guess it's a lot of the BC restaurants, apparently at least 50, according to the British Columbia Restaurant Food Service Association, are missing tips that are paid into these, gratuities paid into these digital wallets from a company called Everyday Payments, a tip pooling service. Boy, we got a bit of a scandal here going on. I had no idea there are these services out there. Did you?
Yeah, no, I didn't, and that's going to make even more people fearing tips in general. I mean, it's just where are they
going? I thought, where are these tips going?
And already people weren't clear about where it was going within a restaurant, right. Let alone outside the restaurant. So it's not great. And frankly, I do hope that, and of course we'll be at the RC show and I suspect that that's going to be a topic of discussion. But I do think that the industry needs to get a hold of this issue because it's getting out of hand a little bit. And because we've been talking about tipping and stuff, but fraudulent companies can come up and figure out ways to actually get money from employees. I mean, this is it's theft. I mean, it's just not right at all.
All right, on to more fun news. Are you watching this show, Heated Rivalry? I've
heard of it. I've been told that it's porn for women. I don't know if it's true or not. I have no idea.
It's pretty saucy, but it's got.
I think 97% of people watching are women.
I don't. Well, whoever is watching, it's got a real thing. Now, why I'm mentioning it in this show is because in a recent episode, one of the characters had a Saint-Vator bagel. Suddenly, the volume is picked up. It's my favorite bagel place in the entire city of Montreal. I dare say all of North America. And their T-shirts are selling out.
Saint-Vator?
Yeah, Saint-Vator. Oh. So it wasn't a bagel. The bagel wasn't featured on the show. It was just she was wearing the T-shirt.
That and Fairmont Bagel, those are the best. They're the best. I don't have to watch the show to know this, really.
3 seconds, 5 seconds maybe, and online orders exploded from across North America. Merchandise sales tripled. They sold out. They're selling more bagels. So the work orders went from 1 to 2 to 300 after that little thing on the episode. So good for them. That's fun. Now, another good news story. Have you ever tried bachan's, the Japanese barbecue sauce that kind of appeared a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I thought it's a wonderful barbecue sauce. It got sold. So, boy, are we in the wrong business. They founded it in 2013. Japanese, bachan's Japanese for granny service. They just sold it for $400 million.
Oh, wow.
And if you think about, we'll be at Seattle, and the chances are there's going to be lots and lots of barbecue sauces as we always see them. And what makes it different? Boy, these guys, stuck with it. 2013, not that long ago, really.
Yep.
And now they went from just selling at farmers markets to Amazon to Whole Foods, and now 25,000 locations.
Yeah.
So, boy, talk about living the dream. It is possible. It is possible.
Oh, it is possible. Absolutely. Yeah. I must say, I mean, going back to the heated rivalry thing, the product placement strategy, it has to be subtle, because I remember the first time that we saw a product being placed in a movie. I believe it was Back to the Future with Pepsi. I think historically, but now today you just put a bagel and they want bagels. There you go.
Yeah, I tell you, it's
good for them. I mean, Saint Viateur and Fairmont Bagels, the best. As long as it's not New York spongy bagels, they're disgusting.
I agree. All right, that's a wrap on this show. I'm Michael LeBlanc, media entrepreneur, and you are?
I'm the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Safe travels, everybody.
Take care.